Hi, everybody. Um, I'm Abby with Fossil Creek Nursery. For those of you who don't know, I've appeared on just a few of our other programs. And I'm here today to talk to you about plant besties. This can include companion crops in both the typical and the slightly revised versions of how that word is used in that kind of vocab. Or it could also be used to apply to trap cropping, intercropping, um, even down to planting things together for nitrogen fixation. So it's a pretty wide field. And I think I will begin by addressing that the most typical use of companion planting as a vocab word in horticulture is using plants together to create some kind of positive effect. And that goes all the way back. Companion planting has been traced back to 8,000 to 10,000 years ago. We're not super sure the exact start date, but that's about whenever it would have originated. And it was, plants used to be associated with one of the four elements and a lot of times with the zodiac. Um, And of course, with our more typical scientific approach, we kind of did away with all that. But a lot of the pairing of plants was based on that connection with an element or connection with the zodiac. And plants would be paired kind of like people really typically pair folks together based on their zodiac, even today. So the word companion plant was originally used to apply there, but is no longer used in the scientific community in that regard because we don't really associate plants with elements or zodiacs anymore. Um, Although a lot of that is super interesting. If you'd like a class on that, just let me know because I find it super interesting how people used to connect things together. And a lot of the older companion plants, even though the logic was a little bit flawed in terms of how we look at things today, um, some of the companion plants do now have some scientific backing, which I find super interesting. Anyways, so the term has kind of changed a little bit, and there has been a lot of recent discourse on do we use that word at all? Me personally, I'm in favor of using the word companion planting as it applies to, like I said, trap cropping or intercropping, because I feel like it connects our traditions with our current day agriculture applications, make sure that we don't just leave all of that stuff behind and honor where things came from. So, like I said, companion planting in terms of elements and zodiacs is no longer really applied. A lot of those connections have not been scientifically backed, so we would just kind of leave that behind, especially for this discussion. But instead, I would love to focus on the current day um, companion planting, how to apply it in your garden, and some interesting little factoids about it as well. So, I guess we'll start with probably the most complete translation, which is intercropping. Intercropping is just essentially planting, and companion planting is usually used in a system that is for food production. So we are using plants to incite a kind of reaction in each other where you improve yield, reduce pest incidence, improve your soil stability and soil nutrient content by companion planting, as it were. Um, I have this resource from Organic and Sustainable Crop Production. This is UT's extension. They define intercropping as the growing of two or more crops in close proximity to promote beneficial interactions between them. Um, and you can use trap cropping to monitor and trap pests, as that term kind of is supposed to. And you can also interplant plants that occupy different ecological niches. so that they complement each other while reducing the amount of ground that is exposed to the sky, and kind of keep things and improve your yield based on having a wider kind of a 3D space, I guess is how I would explain it. So a common and a really old, again going back to that 8,000 to 10,000 year mark, a really old application of this is with the infamous three sisters. A lot of folks that have looked into companion cropping, this is kind of your golden child that has been used for ages, literally. And that is the Native American use of beans, corn, and squash, working three different plants as a general system to support food production in like a very vertical and horizontal aspect. So you use all of your space, you use the plants together to benefit each other in terms of reducing pest incidents and therefore improving yield. Essentially the way that we understand it to have worked and still is mostly working today is corn plant in the middle and beans growing up alongside it. The beans, legumes are nitrogen fixers. They connect with mycorrhizae in the soil, and usually you'd want a pretty specific mycorrhizae. And they help fix nitrogen through the mycorrhizae. They create these really cute little nodules. Well, I think they're cute. And they help, the mycorrhizae essentially brings the nitrogen through, and the nodules fix the nitrogen, and it also brings the fixed nitrogen around to the plants in the vicinity, which is why planting legumes in with other plants as companion plants is highly recommended and can help reduce your application of nitrogen and just add to the overall benefit of the plants around them. So corn in the middle, beans growing up the stalk of corn using that vertical space, and then squash to protect the rest of the plant around the base of the corn bean combo. And that is probably one of the oldest uses of companion plants. And that would be a great example of how intercropping as companion planting kind of works. As well as an example of symbiotic nitrogen fixation. So the other aspect of companion planting is in discouraging or repelling or trapping pests. And trap cropping especially is usually used on a larger scale operation where drawing in the pest to a small home garden is not exactly recommended, but in larger settings, using a trap crop is beneficial in terms of spending your energy on, and your plants or your soil energy into reducing pest incidents by providing the pests with a plant that you are essentially sacrificing to the pest gods. Let's see, so from Virginia State University, defines trap cropping as a neighboring crop that is selected because it is more attractive to the pest and serves to distract them from the main crop. An excellent example of this is the use of collards to draw the diamondback moth away from cabbage. So your moneymaker, if there's a crop that the pests that attack that prefer, and you are not quite so attached to making both plants your moneymaker, then you basically kind of sacrifice one. Or on the flip side, the pest repellent side, there is biochemical pest suppression, which again Virginia State University defines as plants exuding chemicals from roots or aerial parts that suppress or repel plant pests and protect neighboring plants. The example that they give is the African marigold, which releases thiopine, which works as a nematode repellent, which nematodes, I don't believe, are too particular about what they attack. So it's great to plant, especially whenever you have a large, broad variety of something that you are going to try to protect. Yeah, and lots of planting marigolds in with your veg is a trick as old as time. It's amazing how people kind of notice that interaction, but just planting them in. And I have heard, I don't believe that this touches on it, but that they also keep other pest insects away from their the crops that you want to produce. And I have family out in Missouri as another example, and I'm trying to recall the example that she found in her garden. I believe it was like Japanese beetle or something, but she found less incidents in seasons where she interplanted with herbs, especially like strong smelling herbs, which we supposed in our phone conversation, not scientifically backed, but that the smell can sometimes mask or repel pest insects that would be looking to attack. And it just kind of keeps them away, circumvents even having to treat them at all at sometimes. It's not a foolproof system, but it is helpful in every respect. There are also physical spatial interactions, so again, working with that, not just 2D plane, but the 3D plane to improve your yield. And in companion planting, that's usually planting in like large, sun-loving, tall plants with smaller, shade-loving, leafy plants growing in their shade so that you use the entire space. And then, of course, any conversation about companion planting has everything to do with plant diversity. Obviously, that's the way that things have been for a very long time before we got here. And plant diversity kind of adds a little bit of flair to, how do I phrase it? Even just on like a soil level, having your plants be diverse in the nutrients that they need and the things that they leave behind whenever they are pulled out or chopped and dropped or composted. To your food diversity and food security in your home cropping system, and having a wide variety of crops to feed your family, and as well as improve the world around you, which is great. Diversity is kind of the tool that Mother Nature came up with to basically kind of try and do what we're trying to do with companion planting, which is fill every niche, make sure everybody's getting taken care of. And yeah, I guess that's my 2 cents about the beauty of diversity. I have got, again, from that Virginia State University page info sheet on companion planting and gardening. At the end of that is a combination of a crop, a companion, and incompatible, all in a beautiful little spreadsheet here. Just to give some really famous examples are tomatoes and basil. Again, the basil repels pests that the tomato, like tomato hormone or something, is drawn to, so it helps repel pests, as well as tomatoes and basil being a totally classic combo with some mozzarella or something. And let's see, I had written down one more to touch on. Oh yeah, the marigolds, again, like we said, repel nematodes in the soil. Yeah, there's lots of really cool stuff in here. But a lot of it is combining food crops with herbs or plants that occupy the opposite niche of the plant that they are being planted with. Yeah, I will just really quickly give my references so that you guys can look into companion planting yourselves if you would like. Again, diversity is the golden rule of nature, so I'd always highly recommend trying to pick, even among a crop, a diverse slew of plants to really enjoy this summer. Where I began was with the myth of companion planting, and this was a page given to me by one of the other employees here. And this is from Washington State University, so that's where I started. And then I got to the Virginia State University Companion Planting and Gardening resource, fact sheet number 08-17. And then I kind of followed up with taking a second look at trap crops, intercropping, and companion planting with UT's extension W235-F, just to kind of follow up and fill the holes in my own knowledge on companion planting in terms of especially trap crops, which I've only seen in practice once before. It was at the forestry nursery that we have kind of on the north end of town here in Fort Collins. They had a tobacco plant planted in with their little baby trees, and that was to attract, I believe it was like spider mites and whiteflies and aphids and that kind of thing. I got a really brief tour because I considered interning there whenever I was in school, and the tobacco plant attracts the pests and has really hairy, sticky vegetation, so like kind of like flypaper, almost nature's flypaper, and in that way it literally trapped the pests. It was the coolest thing ever. And then this was also a great resource for a better definition on intercropping and kind of how things to avoid, like it mentions in here. Keep in mind not to overseed with companion planting because you're anticipating every inch of your dirt to be covered so that you don't lose so much water and nutrients through evaporation. And we know that sun on bare soil is, for one thing, not natural, and two, not great for the nutrients over time. They kind of break down poorly. Yeah, I think if you have any questions, just give us a call or shoot us an email here at Fossil Creek Nursery. I hope everybody learned something. Oh, I see that we have a comment. Thank you for commenting. I've heard you can plant chives and onions in with your bulbs and plants to help discourage rabbits. I'm trying that this year. That's great. Yeah, I also was looking, and one resource that I found said that garlic also, it agreed with what you're saying, garlic repelled pests. I can't recall specifically what kind of pest that they mentioned while I was kind of poking around. But I'm happy to hear that someone's trying out companion planting, and then you'll have to reach out and let us know if it works, because I know lots of folks that come here struggle with rabbit and kind of vegetative interests of other animals. So yeah, you'll have to let us know if that works. I'd be really curious, but the science is sound. They're definitely very strong smelling, even in their foliage. So yeah, thanks for commenting. I think we're just about to wrap up here. So again, I'm Abby with Fossil Creek Nursery, and thanks for joining me. And we hope to hear from you soon. Thank you.